What would you think if someone worked in America for 30 years, paid every cent of their taxes, and now has to live out of a pickup truck just to save on their power bill? It sounds crazy, but it's no longer rare. In some parts of America today, just running the AC through 10 hot summer days can wipe out your entire grocery budget for the week. A simple sandwich now costs more than a fast food meal. An electric bill is higher than the rent. And in certain neighborhoods, people are selling their homes just to afford insurance. The situation is worse than most people realize. And in this video, we're going to talk about 7 states where everyday folks can no longer afford to live a normal life. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they're reckless with money. It's because everything from food and gas to housing and medicine is pushing them to the breaking point. If you've been cutting back on every little expense just to get by, chances are you're already on this list without even knowing it. Number 1. California. In California, decline is no longer measured by home prices or monthly rent. It's measured by something far more ordinary, the cost of a simple meal. No fancy dishes, no premium steaks or high-end organic produce. Just a plate of food with enough vegetables, enough protein, and fresh ingredients. Not long ago, that was taken for granted. Now it feels like an expense that has to be calculated down to the last dollar. In just 3 years, the price of basic groceries in California has climbed quietly yet relentlessly. A carton of eggs, a bag of carrots, a single chicken breast. These little things, when added up, are enough to make people stop at the checkout line and cross items off the list because the budget just doesn't stretch. And it happens more than once. At local markets, many families have cut back meat consumption to once or twice a week, not because they want to go vegetarian, but because chicken, pork, and even frozen fish are now too expensive to buy regularly. Some have gotten used to noodles with frozen vegetables, treating it as the new standard. Not by choice, but because they've been forced to adapt. Fresh produce, once California's pride, no longer shows up daily on many dinner tables. Families are switching from buying bunches of fresh greens to pre-cut or frozen packs because they're cheaper. But they know well what that lower price means, sacrificing nutrition. What's even more troubling is how this shortage is becoming normalized. Foods that used to be staples are now occasional luxuries. A bag of grapes, a bottle of olive oil, a carton of premium eggs, each has to be weighed carefully like buying electronics. The irony is that most people are still working, still paying taxes, still living modestly, yet every month they face the same choice: eat properly or make it through the bill cycle. Even in places once seen as stable like Orange County or Sacramento, grocery bills are starting to show up on the list of expenses to postpone. No one says it out loud, but you can see it in the lighter shopping carts and in meals that grow quieter and more modest each week. Not everyone is leaving California, but more and more are quietly moving away from the city centers, away from the big metro areas, just to be able to buy a loaf of bread without spending an afternoon doing the math. This story isn't about prices anymore, it's about the limits of endurance. When eating the most basic act of survival becomes a daily stress test, the idea of quality of life barely exists. If a wealthy state with strong agriculture and cutting-edge technology like California leaves its people choosing between a balanced meal and enough gas to get to work, maybe the problem isn't the people anymore. Do you even remember the last time you went grocery shopping without checking the price tag on every single item? Number 2. Florida. Not everyone comes to Florida dreaming of blue seas and warm sunshine. For many, this state was once the final destination, a place to rest after decades of work, to hold on to a little dignity in their later years. But the frightening truth is this: even that dream is now falling apart. Home insurance costs in Florida are rising so fast that many call it the second storm. A house that used to be covered for $1,800 a year can now demand $6,000 or even $8,000. And there's no sign of it slowing down. Each hurricane leaves behind not just physical destruction, but also crumbles people's faith in being able to live here long term. Many residents are forced to go uninsured living, with the highest risk simply to cut a bill they can no longer afford. But that means one strong gust of wind could wipe out everything they've worked for their entire lives. And it doesn't stop there. Electricity bills in Florida are quietly climbing too. Nobody notices when it's $5 more or $10 more. But look back after a year and people are stunned at how much they've spent just to keep the air conditioner running during the brutal summer heat. And without AC. That's a very real danger for the elderly. In apartments around Jacksonville and Fort Lauderdale, some residents limit cooking altogether just to keep the electric bill from spiking. Dinner becomes a cold sandwich or leftovers from the night before. Not by choice, but out of fear of how quickly the meter ticks up hour by hour. Healthcare, already expensive, has become even harder to access. Clinics around Tampa have stopped accepting common insurance plans, or they tack on extra fees under the excuse of rising operating costs. Which means even if you're insured, you still have to pay more if you want to be seen in time. And then there's food. In Florida, grocery shopping no longer feels like freedom. Fresh food stores are vanishing in many neighborhoods, replaced by convenience chains selling frozen meals, snacks, and soda. Fresh vegetables are harder to find. Egg prices remain high. Even bananas, once the cheapest item on the shelf, now make people stop and think before grabbing a bunch. Florida isn't starving in the old sense. It's starving for choice, starving for safety, starving for the feeling of living without trembling at every bill that shows up in the mail. People here don't throw blame. They don't pound the table in outrage. They simply retreat. They leave the big cities. They move away from the coast. They give up services they once relied on for decades just to survive. And it's that quiet retreat that hurts the most. Florida isn't collapsing with a loud crash. It's fading day by day, month by month. And with it, hundreds of thousands of people are silently walking away from the life they thought they'd finally earned the right to enjoy. Number 3. Texas. Texas used to be the go-to destination for anyone tired of high cost in the bigger states. Low taxes, affordable homes, wide open land. Everyone called Texas the dream made real for the middle class being squeezed everywhere else. But now a paradox has taken hold. Living in Texas isn't cheap anymore. It's becoming financially dangerous little by little. Rent in cities like Dallas, Austin, and Houston has surged over the past 3 years. Apartments that once went for under $1,000 are now listed at over $1,600, even in neighborhoods once thought of as working class. The shock isn't just how fast prices rose, but how it came with no real support to balance it out. In many places, residents are being forced to sign new leases with rent hikes of 15 to 25% each year. Say no, and they lose their home. Say yes, and they lose the ability to save, to afford health care, or even to eat properly. When housing eats up nearly everything, food becomes the first place people cut back. And that's led to a troubling side effect few are paying attention to. Texas is now seeing an explosion of bargain markets, not just for clothing, but for near-expired food, mass-produced frozen meals, and processed products with sketchy labels. In crowded neighborhoods around Fort Worth or Lubbock, some stores have completely swapped out their shelves. Fresh vegetables and meat are gone. In their place, white bread, salty snacks, and canned goods. And the foot traffic keeps growing. People aren't shopping to choose anymore. They're shopping to survive. Texas is often praised for its booming tech scene, but here's what gets overlooked. Many older residents don't know how to use discount apps or food assistance programs. They're not online, they don't do mobile banking, they can't access smart discounts, and the system leaves them behind by default. This summer, the number of people turning to churches, charities, and community kitchens in Texas has spiked dramatically. Not because they're unemployed, but because having a job still isn't enough to live. Texas once wore the title the land of opportunity with pride. But increasingly, opportunity belongs only to those with assets, connections, and access to information. The rest, they're slowly fading into the shadows. The saddest part is that collapse here doesn't make a sound. No protests, no long lines at the bank, just bills piling up, cars sitting idle, dinners getting simpler and simpler, and eyes that quietly turn away from the meat counter at the grocery store. Texas isn't more expensive just because prices went up. It's more expensive because the trust and stability has quietly disappeared. Number 4. New York. There was a time when simply living in New York was something to be proud of. The feeling of being at the center of everything: culture, healthcare, finance, convenience. But by mid-2025, a quiet whisper has grown louder. We can't afford to stay here anymore. It's not because of one big crisis. It's because of countless small cracks that keep spreading, eating away at every essential cost, especially healthcare and energy. Two things no one can take lightly, especially the elderly. Electric bills in New York are spiraling out of control. A 2-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn that once averaged $110 a month for electricity and heat now costs $200 or more. That might not sound massive on its own, but once you add water service taxes, building maintenance, and groceries, that number shatters any savings plan a family might have. In neighborhoods like the Bronx and Queens, families have started cutting back on heat in the winter. An extra blanket has become the solution. But anyone who has lived through a New York winter knows that's not something you can repeat year after year. Worse still is the healthcare system. Living in New York once meant access to top doctors and world-class hospitals. Today, those costs make it feel like a cruel joke. A simple specialist visit without top-tier private insurance can run up to $300. And that doesn't even include prescriptions, lab tests, or follow-up care. The result, people are delaying checkups. Some are cutting their prescriptions into budget doses. Others stop taking cholesterol or blood pressure meds because I'll pick it up next month, not this one. These quiet choices are creating consequences far bigger than any statistic can capture. What weighs on people most is the sense of being abandoned right in the middle of modern America. The city lights never go out. The traffic never stops. Money keeps pouring into luxury high-rises. Yet under those towers are shortened dinners, prescriptions left unfilled, and stacks of unpaid bills sitting on kitchen counters. It's not that New Yorkers aren't trying. They work full hours, pay their taxes, and keep pushing forward. But effort alone can't keep up with prices rising this fast. That's not a complaint. That's reality. The dream of a complete New York, a safe place to retire, a city where seniors could live decently, is being eroded month by month, quarter by quarter, by costs that seem small but strike at life's essentials. And the bitter truth is, this people know no one is coming to rescue them. They've voted, they've contributed, they've waited. Now all they can do is quietly adjust. Use less electricity, buy cheaper medicine, eat less, go to the doctor less, and hope nothing bad happens. New York isn't collapsing with a bang, it's slowly slipping out of reach of the very people who once built it and kept it alive. Number 5, New Jersey. Once seen as the calmer alternative for those who wanted to live near New York, But breathe a little easier, New Jersey has now become the textbook example of how taxes and fixed costs can spiral out of control. People here don't talk much about it. They just hold the bill, look at the number, and go quiet. Not because they don't know what to say, but because everything is already clear. Housing prices, property taxes, basic living costs all rising steadily. No big shocks, no sudden spikes, just a slow climb that takes only a few years to push a middle-class family out of the safety zone. Property taxes in New Jersey are the highest in the country, averaging more than 2.4% of a home's value. That means a house worth $350,000 can cost its owner nearly $9,000 a year in property tax alone. And the painful part, that number has nothing to do with income. So even if you're retired living on a fixed pension with no way to increase earnings, you still pay the same tax rate as someone working full-time in Manhattan. And if you can't keep up, the house gets taken. That's it. In places like Camden, Trenton, or even once stable suburbs like Cherry Hill, more and more homes are now listed for sale due to unaffordable fixed costs. Not because of job loss, simply because the price of just existing has become unbearable. And it's not just property taxes. Public transportation in New Jersey is under fire for being unfair. Residents farther from the city, forced to rely on trains and buses, now face higher fares and longer commutes with no financial support for those on fixed incomes. At the same time, driving is less sustainable with gas prices climbing steadily and tolls constantly being adjusted upward. At local supermarkets, the choices aren't what they used to be. Organic sections have shrunk. Fresh vegetables now cost as much as chicken. And budget brands are slowly replacing the trusted names people once bought without hesitation. Every grocery trip has become a negotiation with yourself. Buy enough or cut back? Lower the quality or lower the number of meals? Many who live in New Jersey used to be factory workers, teachers, bus drivers, government employees. Honest, steady jobs. But they no longer feel respected. The sense of being pushed aside, of carrying the heaviest burden while funds still pour into urban beautification projects, is wearing down their faith. People aren't asking for special treatment. They just want fairness. They want the system to stop seeing them as the easiest group to squeeze dry. But more and more, the truth is obvious in New Jersey. Simply holding on to what you have has become a luxury. Not everyone can pack up and leave. Some still owe on their homes. Some have aging parents or kids in school. But deep down, the desire to escape New Jersey is no longer just a thought, it's becoming a plan. Number 6. Oregon. Not loud like New York, not booming like California. Oregon was once the place people moved to when they wanted a slower life, fresh air, a backyard garden, biking instead of driving. But that peace is now being swallowed by a spiral of costs that can't be controlled, especially the hidden ones. Many who settled in Oregon thought they had chosen wisely, far from big cities, close to nature, free from the daily grind. But the lack of competition and weak infrastructure are quietly driving prices up in ways that are sharp and relentless. A simple bottle of cooking oil in Bend or Eugene can run 40% higher than the national average. Milk, eggs, vegetables all inflated because the state's logistics costs are crushing, yet no one talks about it. Every product, every meal is shaped by a supply chain, strained by fuel costs, labor shortages, and inconsistent transportation policies. The problem isn't a single price tag. It's the way Oregon makes its residents pay for things they assumed were free. Clean air, recycling, rainwater turned into drinking water, all come with hidden costs, environmental taxes, local service fees, community contributions, small and scattered, but together they add up to the price of a full grocery basket. In rural towns like Medford or Grants Pass, once symbols of self-sufficiency, people are no longer spared from the storm. Local food shops are shuttering, power bills are climbing, and even internet service, something that should be basic, costs more than $100 a month, while the signal cuts in and out, disrupting work and telehealth. The shortage of family doctors and small clinics is forcing many seniors to drive more than 50 miles just to check their blood pressure or refill a prescription for diabetes. That's not freedom. That's the cost of hollowing out frontline healthcare. In Portland, the state's largest city, those living on fixed incomes are struggling to hold on to their old eating habits. Organic nuts that once felt like a healthy choice now look like a luxury item. Even staples like oatmeal, lentils, and coconut milk tick up every quarter while SNAP benefits stand still. And a shared feeling is taking hold. Oregon is no longer the land of balance. It is becoming a place where every small choice, from a morning coffee to joint supplements, demands a trade-off just to preserve the basics of life. What makes it worse is the way state policies still carry the branding of eco-friendly and community-driven. Yet it's painfully clear that the most vulnerable are the ones being left behind. The truth is, Oregon doesn't shout like other states. Its unraveling comes quietly, and because of that, it hurts more. Number 7. Louisiana. There are places where people don't need to march in the streets to prove they're struggling. All they have to do is show their electric bill, their gas receipt, a grocery bag with 3 items priced double from the week before. In Louisiana, it's the little details like that telling the whole story of collapse. Louisiana has never been a wealthy state, but people here used to get by through community sharing and a quiet balance between what they earned and what it cost to live. That balance has been broken slowly but completely. The job market in Louisiana isn't short on work. What it's short on are jobs that actually pay enough to live. People are still putting in their hours, still getting their paychecks. But what's left in the bank at the end of the month no longer reaches enough to cover the basics. And it stings even more that the sharpest price hikes are hitting where no one can opt out electricity, water, gas, local taxes. There's no easy choice when the summer heat hits 100 degrees and the air conditioning bill can run past $300 a month. Don't use it and you risk heat stroke. Do use it and you risk overdrafting. In places like Shreveport and Alexandria, families are spending evenings out on the porch just to cut down on electricity, an image that feels pulled straight from the 1960s. Food costs in Louisiana's suburbs no longer feel local. Part of it is because big chains control distribution, and part of it is because shipping goods in now runs at 1.5 times the old cost. That's turning simple staples like cooking oil flour and powdered milk into luxuries for households living on low or middle incomes. On top of that, safety nets are shrinking. In many districts, public schools have cut back on lunch programs because education budgets have been slashed. Kids now show up with crackers and bottled water instead of sitting down to a full balanced meal. And in rural Louisiana, where hospitals have shut down for lack of funding, seniors no longer have a place to check their blood pressure or follow up on heart conditions. They're surviving on their own, a kind of nameless survival. Frustration is spreading not in loud protests, but in quieter ways. In the tired eyes of seniors lining up to withdraw their Social Security checks. In the hesitation of a mother deciding between eggs and cough syrup. In the empty roads where cars should be because gas has climbed past $4 a gallon. Louisiana didn't break all at once. It's been unraveling piece by piece from what seemed like its strongest foundations: schools, clinics, utilities, local markets. And the hardest truth is that not everyone still has the strength to speak up. If there's one thing keeping people here from giving up entirely, it's memory. Memory of a place that was once simple, warm, livable without counting every penny. But memory doesn't pay bills, and Louisiana today is no longer the place they once trusted. From California to Louisiana, states that once gave people hope are now wearing them down day by day. Not because people have stopped working hard, but because the system is quietly draining every dollar from their pockets and every meal from their tables. If you've been feeling like life is getting harder, even though you're still working just as much, you're not alone. And if you've been thinking, maybe it's just me, maybe it's time we start talking to each other.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today's analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.